Guilty Crown starts with Shu, a man who often retreats to an empty room at his school. One day, he encounters a woman in a red dress singing sweetly. She is Inori, a vocalist from the famous group Egoist. Suddenly, GHQ members arrive and arrest her, accusing her of being part of a terrorist group called the Funeral Parlor. They take her away, leaving Shu feeling helpless. Shortly after, Funel, Inori's robot, approaches Shu and requests his help to deliver an item called the Void Genome to a specified location. The robot explains that Inori stole the Void Genome from a GHQ lab and hid it within herself. Shu agrees to help, but is confronted by thugs on the way. A man named Guy arrives with his troops to assist Shu. Guy, who knows Inori and Funel, inquires about Inori's condition just as GH troops attack, aware that the Void Genome is in their possession. Guy orders Shu to protect the item, and as Shu follows the command, he sees Inori weakly walking away from a car. Shu rushes to save her, but a robot shoots at him, breaking the Void Genome. As it shatters, Shu experiences a flash of unfamiliar memories and gains the power to draw a sword from Inori's body, using it to defeat the enemy troops. The sword returns to Inori, leaving Shu confused. Guy, communicating through Funel, instructs Shu to take Inori away. Guy is revealed to be the leader of the Funeral Parlor and Inori's superior. He is disappointed that Inori allowed Shu to use the Void Genome, which grants the power of a king to draw out the hidden power within people's hearts and turn it into a weapon called a void. Each person's void is unique and can match the power of a god. Originally intended for Guy, the Void Genome now empowers Shu. Guy insists that Shu use this power to fight. Suddenly, Guy receives a call informing him that GHQ troops, led by the ruthless Daryl, have taken civilians who support the Funeral Parlor hostage. Guy orders Shu and his team to rescue them. Upon arriving, Shu witnessed the GHQ's brutality firsthand. The attacking GHQ troops, known as antibody units, were authorized to kill civilians suspected of carrying a deadly virus without any testing. However, due to Guy's strategy, the Funeral Parlor troops managed to trap and surround the antibody unit. Unfortunately, the antibody troops had placed poison gas underground, threatening to kill civilians instantly and forcing Guy out of hiding. Guy emerged with a plan and asked Shu to use Inori's void to defeat Daryl, who was positioned in the back lines. Shu complied, and upon defeating Daryl, he extracted and used Daryl's void, which had the power to reflect enemy attacks. This ability allowed Shu to turn the antibody unit's attack back on themselves, leading to their destruction. Shu's actions earned him praise from Guy and other Funeral Parlor members. A few days later, Shu returned to his normal life. At school, he was surprised to see Inori, now a new student in his class. The other students were excited to recognize her as a famous vocalist, unaware of her true identity as a member of the Funeral Parlor. Shu pretended not to know her and looked away. After school, he returned to his apartment, only to find Inori waiting for him. She could access his apartment because Funel had modified his bedroom door. Shu lived alone since his mother was busy with work. One night, a man named Yahiro unexpectedly visits Shu's apartment and is surprised to see Inori there. Inori immediately asks him out, but they soon discover that Guy is waiting nearby with important information. Guy informs them that one of Shu's schoolmates witnessed their defeat of the antibody unit the previous day. He orders Shu to find this witness using his unique power to identify the person through their void. The next day at school, Shu begins checking his friend's voids. Fortunately, when he extracts a void, the person loses their memory for a short period, allowing Shu to operate undetected. Eventually, Shu discovers that the witness Guy mentioned is Yahiro. Inori wants to kill Yahiro upon learning this, but Shu pleads with her to spare him. They decide to keep their identities secret, and Guy agrees to let Yahiro go. The following day, on their way to school, Yahiro betrays Shu by selling him out to the GHQ troops. Shu is taken to the GHQ headquarters, where he is interrogated by Major Segai about his connections with the Funeral Parlor members. During the interrogation, Segai learns that Guy plans to attack the GHQ headquarters to rescue captured comrades. Seizing the moment, Segai tries to manipulate Shu. He says that the Funeral Parlor will save Kido, a captive serial killer responsible for killing thousands. He also gives Shu a tool to track Kido's whereabouts, instructing Shu to use it when he is with Guy so that the GHQ troops can capture Guy. If Shu refuses, Segai threatens to replace him with Inori. Later, Guy, disguised as a lawyer, visits Shu. The funeral parlor then hacks the prison system to free the prisoners because Guy wants to save Kido. However, Shu, influenced by Segai's manipulation, questions the true purpose of the funeral parlor and refuses to help. Meanwhile, Inori is on her way to help Shu, but heads to a dangerous place by mistake. Upon learning this, Shu rushes to assist her. During the chaos, Shu encounters Kido, released by Guy, and takes Kido's void, which has anti-gravity power. He uses it to save Inori, who is falling from the top of a building. After catching her, he uses her void to fight off their enemies, enabling their escape from the prison. Shu then continues to follow Guy, still carrying the tracking device Segai gave him. At the funeral parlor's headquarters, Guy introduces Shu to all the members and declares that Shu, possessing the power of a king, will be central to their strategy against GHQ. The funeral parlor plans to carry out an important operation in 3 days to seize an item called leukocytes. Guy also instructs Ayase to give Shu basic training for the mission. Initially, Shu underestimates Ayase, seeing her as just a disabled girl in a wheelchair. However, when she attacks him, he is quickly overpowered and passes out. After Shu came to his senses, he realized the tracking device Segai had given him was missing. It turned out Ayase had it, mistaking it for an ordinary pen. When Shu asked her to return it, she refused, promising to give it back only if he passed a training session. Over the next few days, Shu underwent the special training with her. One night, Shu visited Inori at the apartment to express his gratitude for her help in freeing him from prison the previous day. However, Inori explained that everything she did was under Guy's orders and that she belonged to Guy. Shu was taken aback by this revelation. His heartbreak deepened when he saw Inori enter Guy's room alone. Ayase later clarified that Inori was caring for Guy, who had been hiding his deteriorating health from the others. A few days later, Shu began his graduation training, which involved confronting a robot controlled by Ayase. His objective was to bypass the robot and reach a vehicle behind it. Initially struggling, Shu decided to use Void, a power from one of the spectators, to obstruct Ayase's view. This tactic allowed him to successfully reach the vehicle, officially making him a member of the funeral parlor. Ayase then returned his tracking pen. Suddenly, a female member named Sugumi delivered urgent news. GHQ members had fired a satellite weapon called leukocytes towards Point Delta, where Guy was located. Leukocytes had the devastating power to create holes in the earth. Fortunately, Guy survived the attack, though they lost all their weapon supplies. He then outlined his strategy to stop the leukocytes. Shu is tasked with using Kenji's anti-gravity void to deactivate the leukocyte control core, but the mission is perilous, with a high chance that 1 in 3 members could die. Fearing for his friends' lives, Shu refuses and resigns from the mission. Later, Inori visits Shu, urging him to reconsider and listen to Guy's explanation about the mission. Moved by her plea, Shu agrees. However, upon meeting Guy, they end up fighting. Eventually, Shu regains trust in Guy and decides to participate in the mission. The team conducts reconnaissance to attack the GHQ headquarters and stop the leukocytes. Initially, everything goes smoothly. Shu, Inori, Guy, and Kenji infiltrate the GHQ headquarters and locate the leukocyte control core. Shu uses Kenji's void to attack the leukocytes. However, Daryl, who anticipated their move, ambushes them with a robot, shooting at them mercilessly. One of Daryl's shots hits the control core, causing a leukocyte satellite to fall towards Tokyo, endangering its residents. In the emergency, Guy asks Shu for a tracking pen from Segai, knowing it could track their location. Segai appears, and Guy strikes a deal with him. He will help save Tokyo if Segai spares Shu and forgives his mistakes. The pen is linked to a leukocyte satellite, and pressing it will cause the satellite to fire a laser at the pen's location. Guy had anticipated Segai's cunning from the start and planned to use the pen to destroy the falling leukocyte satellite. To do this, Guy would have to sacrifice himself by being hit by the laser attack. Understanding Guy's intentions, Shu regrets their earlier conflict and decides to help. Using Inori's void, Shu plans to shoot down all the leukocyte satellites. When his weapon aligns with the satellite, he unleashes his power, successfully destroying all the satellites. He then apologizes to Guy, and they reconcile. A few days later, Shu and Inori are on the train heading to school. Upon arrival, Shu faces taunts from other students who have learned about his capture by GHQ. Only Kiyohare and Soda stand up for him, along with another female student named Arisa, who is the heir to the prominent technology company Kohoin Group. When Shu arrives home, he is surprised to find his mother, Haruka, there. She is initially confused to see him bringing a girl home, but fortunately, she doesn't mind Inori's presence. His mother is very close to her. Meanwhile, at Funeral Parlor's headquarters, Guy receives a report that their stockpile of weapons is running low because they were destroyed by the leukocyte laser. He needs to find funding for their war effort and quickly formulates a plan. That evening, Guy asks Shu to infiltrate a luxury yacht where he plans to meet with influential people. It turns out that the person Shu will meet is Arisa's grandfather, the owner of the Kohoin Group. Guy hopes his organization can work with them. However, Shu is shocked to see his mother with Arisa's grandfather. His mother, a researcher, has close ties to GHQ members, and Arisa is also there, noticing Shu's presence. Afraid his disguise will fail, Shu flees. Guy, also in disguise, momentarily loses sight of Shu and then flirts with Arisa to make her blush. While hiding, Shu receives a call from headquarters. Sugumi informs him that GHQ is about to attack the yacht with missiles, knowing he and Guy are on board. Shu finds Guy, who is disguised as a ship's servant, and relays the information. Guy orders Shu to get off the ship and wait for him as he has a plan to save the ship. He then takes Arisa to the deck because Shu needs to use her void, which has strong protective power. Shu uses the void to block the GHQ's missile attacks, saving everyone on board. Unbeknownst to them, Arisa's grandfather sees their actions. He calls the Funeral Parlor's headquarters to inform them that he is willing to finance the organization. The members at the base are overjoyed by the good news. Later, Guy informs Shu that they need to infiltrate the GHQ headquarters in Oshima and will need Soda's void to do so. Shu pretends to take Soda, Hare, Kanan, and Inori on a beach vacation to Oshima. Guy instructs Shu to use Inori to tease Soda, knowing he is a fan of hers. At the beach, Shu feels conflicted about the plan. Hare notices his mood and invites him for a walk, showing her affection for him. At night, Soda takes Inori to a park and shows her a video he made, then confesses his love to her. Unbeknownst to them, Shu is watching and feels jealous. He rushes over, shouting that Inori belongs to him, and takes Soda's void, causing Soda to faint. The Funeral Parlor members, also present, hear Shu's outburst and mock him as they approach. Guy quickly directs them to proceed to the GHQ headquarters, with Shu carrying the unconscious Soda. Using Soda's camera-shaped void, Shu unlocks all the doors and systems. However, when they arrive at the GHQ headquarters, they discover the item they were seeking has been taken by Kato, a GHQ member. General Yan and other GHQ members are aware of their actions, leading to Shu's capture and imprisonment by Yan. The next day, when Shu came home from school by train, he noticed Hare standing and watching him. She invited him to walk with her and spend some time together. Just as Hare was about to speak, a man with a medicine box rushed past them to board the train. It turned out the man was Yahiro, who was being targeted by GHQ members for stealing illegal drugs. Yahiro intended to use the drugs to cure his younger sister, Jun, who was infected with the apocalypse virus. That night, Shu called Ayase to ask their organization for help with Jun. However, when Shu brought Jun to the pickup point, GHQ troops were already there, having followed and monitored his movements. Using Yahiro's void, Shu attacked them. During the ensuing battle, Daryl, who was operating a robot, captured Jun, but the apocalypse virus quickly transferred to the robot. Shu then thrust Yahiro's void into the robot, and suddenly, Jun appeared in Shu's mind. She was in chains and begged Shu to use Yahiro's void to break the chains of her life, not wanting to burden Yahiro any longer. Shu reluctantly complied, and Jun died peacefully. When Yahiro regained consciousness, Shu explained everything that had happened while he was unconscious, including Jun's fate. From a distance, Hare watched Shu and Yahiro, having witnessed the entire series of events and learning about Shu's powers. The next day at school, Hare approached Shu. He was still traumatized by Jun's death and didn't want to fight anymore, dreading the possibility of having to let another friend die. In the evening, Shu and Inori planned to go on a mission to retrieve the items from the previous day. However, Shu failed to draw out her void because he was preoccupied with thoughts of June. As a result, the mission was aborted. The following day, Ayase tried to advise Shu, but he ignored her. Eventually, Guy intervened, pulling Shu out of the funeral parlor, and even Inori left him. Guy and Inori had to proceed with the mission without Shu. Inori looked visibly sad. Upon arriving at the GHQ headquarters, they attempted to infiltrate and retrieve the items from the previous day. However, the item in Yan's possession suddenly activated, revealing that Seigai was behind it. Seigai and Kato had conspired to seize the item, betraying Yan. Seigai broadcasted the item's resonance through the city's transmitting tower, causing the townspeople to contract the apocalypse virus, reminiscent of the Lost Christmas incident 10 years prior. Guy also contracted the virus, and Yan was killed by Daryl, leading to the supreme leader of GHQ's downfall to Kato. Shu's mother, a subordinate of Kato, attempted to escape the base, unaware of his nefarious plan. Kato, now in control of GHQ, announced to the entire city that these events were the work of terrorists from the funeral parlor organization, aiming to turn the citizens against them. Shu, upon hearing the announcement, found it unbelievable. Ayase further informed him that the other members had been defeated, leaving only Shu able to aid funeral parlor. The next day at school, Shu appeared deep in thought, accompanied by Hare and Funel. After classes, he summoned his friends to his base and appealed for their assistance in utilizing their voids to rescue Guy and Inori from GHQ headquarters. Here, Shu revealed his affiliation with Funeral Parlor and dispelled his friends' initial misconceptions about the organization being terrorist-linked, instead revealing GHQ as the true antagonists. They agreed to help him, and together they infiltrated GHQ headquarters. Within, Shu's mother worked on a system to amplify Inori's singing voice across the city, capable of neutralizing a virus infecting the populace, including Guy. Determined, Shu and his friends used their voids to breach the inner sanctum, where Inori was held. However, their mission was interrupted by a mysterious man who possessed a power akin to Shu's king ability. This man, Dart, seized Inori's void and attacked Shu. Fortunately, Guy arrived in time to save him, sacrificing himself in the process. Dart abducted Inori with the intent to resurrect a woman named Mana, prompting Guy to urge Shu to pursue them. As Shu chased Dart, the latter triggered a flashback, flooding Shu's mind with childhood memories. At that time, Shu and his older sister, Mana, discovered a boy who had collapsed on the beach. Mana aided him, and they became friends, only to realize later that the boy was Guy. In Shu's memories, he and Guy had been best friends since childhood, leaving him bewildered at forgetting such a crucial memory. As Shu awakened, he found Kato standing beside Inori's unconscious body. Kato revealed that Inori was created as a vessel to awaken Mana, the first human infected with the apocalypse virus. Kato aimed to recreate Lost Christmas and infect all citizens with the virus. Shu immediately sought to prevent Mana's awakening, but she insisted it was inevitable, citing Shu's childhood rejection of her love due to their sibling relationship. While conversing, Shu noticed the apocalypse virus mark on Mana's cheek. Upon regaining consciousness, Mana attempted to attack Shu, but Guy and Ayase intervened to aid him. Guy then recounted the truth about the first Lost Christmas incident that night at the church. He intended to warn Shu about the darkness within Mana, but Mana attacked Guy before Shu arrived, leading Shu to view her as a monster and distance himself. This triggered Mana's rage, causing the virus within her to spread globally. Guy chose to lead his own life, and Shu elected to forget his past memories. After Guy shared the story, Shu gained a new king's power, the ability to extract voids from individuals without rendering them unconscious. Guy asked Shu to extract his void, which he then used to protect Inori by shooting her void. This revealed that Guy's void could remove others' voids. Consequently, Shu employed Inori's void in battle against their adversary, while Guy sacrificed himself to prevent Mana's resurrection. Following Guy's instructions, Shu reluctantly stabbed both Guy and Mana simultaneously, left with no other recourse. Afterward, the place was destroyed, and both Guy and Mana disappeared. Shu carried Inori away from the devastation, both mourning Guy's death deeply. Several days later, Tokyo was placed under quarantine by the GHQ, accompanied by an internet blackout. Students were forbidden to leave school grounds, prompting Ayase and Tsugumi from Funeral Parlor to blend in as students at Shu's school. The fate of the other members of Funeral Parlor remained uncertain after they dispersed. While still at school, Shu confided in Yahiro about his new ability to extract voids without causing unconsciousness, a power Yahiro believed would be invaluable during the quarantine. One night, their school was attacked by a group seeking food supplies. Shu utilized Ayase's void, granting him flight, aiding in their victory over the attackers. Meanwhile, Kato announced at GHQ headquarters that the government would not aid Tokyo's virus-infected residents, sealing them off for a decade with a massive wall. The following day, panic gripped the students at Shu's school, gathering them in the school hall. They requested Arisa's intervention as the heir to the Kohon group to resolve the issue, leveraging her influence to secure weekly vaccinations for everyone at the school. Days later, GHQ initiated a cleanup operation, reducing the quarantine area by tightening the barrier and employing lethal force against anyone approaching the wall. GHQ utilized multiple remote surveillance routes, heightening fear among the students. Rumors circulated at the school about Funeral Parlor members disguised as students, promising freedom to anyone who exposed them. Ayase and Tsugumi were eventually captured and handed over to GHQ, prompting Shu to refute the false accusations and assert GHQ's unwillingness to release them. A female student betrayed them, leading GHQ to bring Shu, Tsugumi, and Ayase to the border wall, where they were supposedly executed. However, Shu used Tsugumi's void to deceive GHQ with duplicates. Following the resolution, Yahiro proposed Shu as Arisa's successor, supported by all the students, making Shu the school's new leader. Soon after, Yahiro devised a plan to organize students based on their void powers, granting special privileges and priority for food or vaccines to those with the most useful abilities, while others were considered expendable. Initially, Shu opposed Yahiro's plan, reluctant to judge friends solely by their void powers, even promising Soda he wouldn't go along with it. However, as food and vaccines became scarce, he reluctantly implemented the plan. He was taken aback to find Soda ranked at the bottom, considered the least useful. Feeling isolated at school headquarters for breaking his promise to Soda, Harry arrived to comfort him with a reassuring hug. The next day, Shu learned that Soda and other low-ranking students had fled in search of a vaccine to prove their worth. Shu, Yahiro, and Hare quickly pursued them by car to seek an explanation. Soda explained they sought a vaccine to demonstrate their value, but GHQ robots tracked them down and opened fire, injuring them. Hare promptly tended to the wounded. Suddenly, Soda approached Hare and requested she use her void to repair the car. While fixing it, she was shot by a GHQ robot. Shu attempted to save Hare, but was shot and gravely wounded himself. When Hare regained consciousness, she used her void to heal Shu first, but was struck by a GHQ robot's shot, causing her void to be instantly destroyed and the apocalypse virus to infect her body. Despite this, she summoned the strength to heal Shu. Upon waking, Shu discovered that Hare had succumbed to the virus, her body disintegrating into particles before his eyes. Overwhelmed with grief, Shu mourned loudly for the person who had loved and believed in him. Hare's death sparked an immediate transformation in Shu. With a determined expression, he seized Inori's void and launched an attack on all the GHQ robots. He also confronted Soda, blaming him for Hare's death and arrogantly proclaiming himself as the new king. Sometime later, Arisa's grandfather dispatched his agent, Argo, to rescue her. Argo, one of the few remaining members of Funeral Parlor, arrived in Tokyo to find the dire conditions shocking. Upon meeting Shu, however, he was taken aback by Shu's drastic change. Shu had become a feared and revered figure, almost like a king at the school. The students both feared and respected him deeply. Shu even callously threw a friend, infected with the virus and deemed useless, into the sea. Upon learning of Argo's mission to retrieve Arisa, Shu intervened, unwilling to lose someone with a special void. Tsugumi, who disapproved of Shu's new demeanor, aided Argo's escape from the school. When Shu discovered this betrayal, he and Argo clashed, but Argo managed to temporarily overpower him. Yahiro arrived to support Shu, warning Argo to stay away. Suddenly, a piece of iron fell from the sky, narrowly missing Shu's female comrades. He acted on instinct to save her, but the iron struck her void, destroying it. With her void gone, her body swiftly succumbed to the apocalypse virus, mirroring what happened to Hare. It finally dawned on Shu the dire consequence of void destruction: death by virus infection. He promptly seized Argo's void and took control of it, even using it to assert dominance over his subordinates. This only intensified the students' animosity towards him, but Shu remained indifferent to their feelings, focused solely on his own plans, including an impending assault on the border wall to escape. Suddenly, rumors circulated among the students that Shu was concealing the lethal consequence of void destruction, sparking widespread panic. Yahiro traced the source of the rumors back to Arisa, who aimed to undermine Shu and reclaim her former position. In short, the day arrived for the assault on the border wall. Shu orchestrated a plan to disable the transmitter atop Tokyo Tower, which controlled all GHQ robots remotely. He swiftly directed other students to clear his path to the tower. Soon after, a fierce battle erupted between the students and the GHQ robots. Amidst the casualties among the students, Shu skillfully utilized others' voids to reach Tokyo Tower and disable the machine controlling GHQ's robots. With the robots deactivated, the students began to withdraw from the border wall and regroup. However, Arisa manipulated fellow students, including Soda, into betraying Shu. Soda pushed Shu into a pit, but Inori arrived in time to rescue him, only to be shot by a GHQ robot. GHQ had anticipated Shu's plan and set a trap. To Shu's astonishment, he encountered a figure from GHQ who was supposed to be deceased, but had been revived by them. The man swiftly approached Shu, severing his hand to seize the power of the void genome. Panicking as his king's power vanished, Shu watched as a UN fighter plane above them prepared to destroy Tokyo due to the spreading apocalypse virus. However, the man, now violent and ruthless, extracted 3 voids from nearby individuals to neutralize the threat from the plane. He then seized control, taking Arisa with him back to Kato. Subsequently, the world seemed to fall under the man's dominion. He threatened UN members and global citizens with the hacked leukocyte satellite, warning that any approach to Tokyo would be met with deadly force. The UN reluctantly complied with his demands, acknowledging his authority. Sometime after the incident, GHQ troops returned to Tokyo on orders from Guy to locate Inori. They eventually discovered her hiding with Shu in a building. Suddenly, troops unknown to GHQ attacked Guy in their vehicles, sent by Arisa's grandfather, who wanted her to return home. However, Arisa chose to stay with Guy, fatally shooting her own grandfather. Meanwhile, Inori, with Shu, began behaving strangely. Sensing an evil force controlling her, she felt compelled to surrender herself to GHQ to ensure Shu's safety. She used her strength to make Shu faint and then kissed him before facing GHQ alone. Transforming into a fearsome combat mode, she easily dispatched GHQ robots, but Guy effortlessly restrained her. Upon awakening, Shu realized Inori had gone to sacrifice herself. He devised a plan to rescue her, secretly approaching Arisa, still in quarantine, and taking her hostage. He demanded Arisa reveal Inori's location. Through Arisa's monitor, Shu learned his mother had betrayed GHQ to secure the remaining void genome capsules. Determined to find his mother, Shu compelled Arisa to lead him. They discovered Ayase, Yahiro, Soda, Kanon, and Sugumi with the capsules. His mother intended to give Shu a capsule to restore his strength, but fearing rejection by his body, she hesitated. Their location was suddenly attacked by GHQ troops under Sagai's command, who tracked the capsule. Shu and Arisa witnessed the assault and rushed to protect his mother. Pressed by the situation, Ayase agreed to Shu's mother's plan to inject the capsule into her own body, but Segai intervened, aiming to seize it for himself. In the ensuing struggle between Segai and Ayase, the capsule rolled to Shu's feet. Acting swiftly, Shu injected the void genome into himself, restoring his king's power. Now able to extract voids from his own body, Shu regenerated his lost arm and effortlessly defeated Segai, displaying even greater strength. His newfound power allowed him to shoulder the burdens, darkness, and ailments of others. As Shu used Soda's void, which had previously recovered from the apocalypse virus, he found himself infected by it as well, seemingly a fate he could not avoid. Later, Guy announced his intention to launch Lost Christmas Part 2, threatening to unleash the apocalypse virus worldwide. In response, all members of the organization united to stop him. Simultaneously, Guy and Kato discussed the origins of the virus at GHQ headquarters. They revealed that Shu's father, Oma Kurosu, alongside Kato, had researched the virus, initially discovered in a meteor by Kurosu's daughter, Mana, who became its first victim. Kurosu's wife died after Shu's birth, prompting his dedication to creating the void genome. He later met Haruka, Kato's younger sister, who treated his children as her own, contrasting with Kato's decision to use abandoned children as experimental subjects, including Guy. Feeling outmatched by Kurosu's brilliance, Kato chose to kill him during the first Lost Christmas. Despite being stepmother and stepson, Haruka and Kurosu shared a deep bond. Before heading into battle, Shu gathered voids from his friends, preparing for the coming conflict. With the unwavering trust of his friends, who entrusted their voids to him, knowing their lives were at stake if he fell, Shu embarked on a mission to confront Guy. However, they weren't the only ones intent on stopping Guy. UN troops had also surrounded his headquarters. Despite this, Guy swiftly neutralized the UN forces using voids from Kenji, Dart, and Arisa, obliterating the entire army in moments. Undeterred, Shu and his comrades pressed forward to rescue Inori and confront Guy. Tsugumi initiated a remote hack that disabled Guy's robotic systems, allowing Shu to breach Guy's base effortlessly. Inside, Guy was attempting to awaken Mana's body using Inori. Inori, realizing her impending fate, expressed gratitude to Guy for introducing her to Shu, allowing her to experience love. As she faced oblivion, her memories faded and she began to forget Shu. In her final moments, Inori began singing. Meanwhile, Shu, searching for Inori, heard her singing voice. Just as he moved towards her, Dart intervened, blocking his path. Dart challenged Shu to a duel, eager to prove who was stronger between Shu and Guy. However, Shu's only concern was rescuing Inori. The battle commenced, with Dart deploying a line of individuals whose voids he intended to use. Initially struggling against Dart, Shu eventually used a combination of voids to overcome him. Dart, realizing he was outmatched, chose to retreat and vanished. Shu resumed his search for Inori, but arrived too late. Guy had successfully revived Mana using Inori's body. With Mana's resurrection, Lost Christmas Part 2 commenced, accompanied by a mysterious purple light that spread across the globe. Upon seeing Shu, Mana embraced him, revealing her longing for him, but he pushed her away, triggering her fury as she recalled his past rejection. Shortly after, Guy seized Mana's void and unleashed the apocalypse virus worldwide. Shu intervened, leading to a fierce battle between them. As Guy gained the upper hand, Shu began to lose hope until he noticed a flower growing from Inori's remains. From within the flower, Inori's spirit urged him to keep fighting. Drawing on her void, Shu found renewed strength and managed to defeat Guy. Meanwhile, Shu's mother successfully halted Kato and his allies' plans. After Guy died, Mana's body disappeared, and Inori recovered. Unfortunately, she has been infected with the severe apocalypse virus, which can destroy her body. Shu finally hugged her tightly. Then he uses his power to absorb all the viruses that have spread worldwide. And in the end, those who are infected can finally be cured. But Shu had to sacrifice himself because all the viruses would lodge in his body. His body begins to be filled with the virus, but Inori tries to save him so that he can survive the virus. At the same time, the place was destroyed. His friends who watched the building crumble couldn't help but mourn. Several years have passed, Tokyo can return to normal, and life goes on as usual. It turned out that Shu managed to survive the incident at that time, and he was reunited with his friends. Even though he still has to lose his hands in Inori, he still remembers Inori in his mind. The anime ends. The moral that can be learned is that sometimes to save many people, we must be willing to sacrifice ourselves and even those closest to us. Hello, and see you again in the next video. Please give the channel a like and a subscription. Thank you very much.